Welcome to the S'mores Indoors Podcast, the perfect combination of talk and interviews between my favorite podcast hosts. Now please, sit back, relax, and welcome your host, Corey.
Welcome to the S'mores Indoors Podcast. Once again, I am Corey, your host, here with Jonathan. Jonathan, what's up? How's it going, man?
What is going on, dude? It has been a long 2 weeks, man. I've got so much crap to just spew out into the world about movies now.
Well, me as well, and among other things, man. It's been a weird week for me. The last couple of days, my oldest son was in the hospital. He had some kind of undetermined infection, and even had a COVID test, which I'm sure that sucked. And what's really bad is, now with the kind of climate we're in, he had to stay up there by himself. And he is 19, but still, it's kind of
yeah.
But
is he okay? He's still in the hospital?
Yeah, he's on some antibiotic and he's out now.
Good.
So hopefully all is going to be better. And but yeah, it's been kind of crazy. So what's been going on with you?
Man, nothing. I didn't know that had happened to you, man. I'm glad he's okay. So, prayers for a speedy recovery. Definitely, man. No, I haven't been doing a lot, man. I've been watching some movies. I have been doing that. I've been doing a little bit more of that than I had been before. So, got some good ones to talk about if we get a minute here. So
yeah, I'll throw a couple out there. I've been on like I don't know why. I've been on like this Nick Cage kick.
Nice.
I watched 8mm last night, and man, that's a kind of a dark movie for the guy that did Batman Forever.
Oh yeah, it totally is, man. I remember seeing that. Was it the 90s that came out? I remember like my parents watching that, and I was like, wow, this is freaky.
I want to say it was like late 90s that came out. It may have been early 2000s, but I'm not sure. And then my daughter was over a couple of weeks ago, and we watched both National Treasure movies, which, I don't know, being a history buff I kind of am, those are ridiculous movies, but I kind of enjoy like the scenes, from different places in the country, so that's kind of cool too. So,
dude, there's a lot of like guilty pleasure Nick Cage movies.
Oh my gosh, almost all of them are.
Dude, Con Air is my number one, and that's probably got to be like Pete Cage right there.
Dude, if you really want to go batshit crazy, just throw Wicker Man on, and you got.
I know, but like I don't like. But the movie, like Con Air, I can get behind. I'm like, yeah, this dude's a badass.
Yeah, Wicker Man, he's walking around slapping women around.
It was all for honey.
Yeah.
You bitches.
Yeah. I'm spending my time watching really good movies here. So.
Yeah.
What have you been watching, man?
Man, this week I picked up a couple of Twilight Time. You remember the Twilight Time limited releases that they would do? I picked them up from Garrett. You know Garrett. When they did that, he did that auction with CK. I got The Blob, the 80s version of The Blob, and John Carpenter's Vampires. And I'd actually never seen either one of those. And
man, it's crazy you say that, because I watched that 88 Blob for the first time like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I put it on. I think I watched it Wednesday. Yeah, I put it on, and it was good. But I actually, out of the two, I was really surprised with how much I like vampires.
Oh, cool.
It was that's a good time.
James Woods in that, right?
Yes, it was fun. And like the fifth Baldwin brother, was it like Daniel Baldwin or something?
Gosh, that's cool. Yeah, I knew you were picking those up from him. I'm glad you enjoyed them. But
that was totally worth it, man. I'm glad I was able to get those for a good price.
And speaking of Twilight Times, I know they've got a big sale going on. Did you find anything you wanted to pick up from them?
The only thing I got, like, I guess I kind of figured they would have more horror stuff because they did those limited runs of popular titles, but I guess like they lost all that to Shout Factory or something. So the only thing I could find that I actually wanted was 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, that Joe Pesci movie from the 90s. So I picked that up, and that's it. It's a shame to see them going out of business, though.
Yeah, that sucks. Those horror titles they did put out, it does feel like Shout's put a lot of those out recently. You know, they had the Blob and they had vampires and
Scream. Was it not Scream? Christine. I guess that's put out by the studio. I guess Universal.
Yeah, I think so. And they had Fright Night back in the day too, but I guess who put that out? I know Eureka had a release of that, and I think someone else did too. But yeah, I looked at that site. There's a couple that I was kind of interested in, but I'm kind of waiting. They're not like high on my list, and I've spent a ton of money, man. I got to tell you, I actually bought a region-free Blu-ray player last week, and it's actually a 4K player because I said that I was. I've said before I wasn't thrilled with the way 4K looks on my Xbox One S, so I wanted to get a standalone player, and this 4K player also plays region-free Blu-rays and DVDs. So I dropped $160 on that. And,
which you're gonna have to send me a link to which one that is, because I really need to pick up a region-free player.
Yeah, I'll send you some that I looked at. I bought this on eBay, so I felt like it was a pretty good deal, and it plays great. So yeah, and I think the 4Ks look a lot better on that player too. So
yeah, I was in Michael Felcher's auction this week, and if I would have had a region-free player, like there was a ton of stuff you could pick up for pennies on the dollar is what it would have cost you to get the American version of it from him. So I was kind of doing quick searches in between stuff, going, how much can I get one of these for? So
man, I heard that auction was for the most part for high rollers.
Man, I was in there with him, man. There was a couple times I thought I was gonna walk away with something, but I mean, no, like the Blu-ray stuff that he was selling. I mean, it went pretty much. It either went for a really good deal, like when he put like 7 Scream Factory collector's editions together.
Yeah.
You get, I mean, somebody get it for like $120. That's a deal every day, right?
Yeah.
But like, sure. I just wasn't trying. Like, I only needed like 3 of them, right? So like, how much do you want to put in there? Yeah. But somebody did buy the Critters box set off there for like $10 more than an MSRP's for. So I was like, because I went basically up to MSRP. I was like, I want it anyway, so I'll just get it from Slippy. And then somebody outbid me, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like,
yeah, that's weird. Well, man, I think with this whole pandemic or whatever you want to call it, there's been a ton of sales. And you were talking earlier off air about Criterion having a sale. But man, I hit up that there was a kind of going out of print Scream Factory sale the other day, and I got on that and spent $80. Did you get anything off that sale?
I picked up a couple. I probably won't see them till this time next year, knowing how Scream Factory is. I got the Video Dead and TerrorVision 2-pack. Because I don't know if you mentioned it. I don't think you did just now. There was a $10 off coupon site-wide, too, and that worked on these going out of print titles. So I picked up that. The Jeepers Creepers 1 was on sale for $7.99, so I picked it up. I mean, even though I already have the MGM Blu-ray, like I wanted it for the features. And that was the only 2 I got. I'd actually picked up Candyman 2 for $12 before that started. I got it on Amazon, but I got it last week too.
Right.
What did you end up snagging?
Man, I've almost forgot what I bought now. I did get that TerrorVision Video Dead. I picked up that Volume 3 of the Vincent Price. That was a big chunk of what I spent. So I picked up that Candyman 2. I haven't seen that movie for a long time, but I know just with the setting in New Orleans, has always been a fan of that for that reason. And beyond that, I don't remember. So it'll be a surprise when I open that box.
Nice. I tried to get in to get Prison, like, because I saw that Prison was a part of that sale, and that must have went immediately, because I mean, like, I got the email and opened it and it was out of stock, but I knew that earlier in the week I had been on there and it was still available. So
there was a lot that were sold out when I got on there, but thankfully it wasn't anything I really was that crazy about having to have. But
if I was a smarter man, I would have bought more, like anything that was a collector's edition. I probably should have just picked up, and then by the time the sale's over, they're going to go for $40 on eBay. So
right. So that's why I grabbed that Vincent Price. I thought, eventually, if I'm not that into it, that's going to be worth some money down the road. So
oh, absolutely,
flip it for new stuff. So
by the way, before we move on, I want to say that's really cool of Scream Factory to keep it in the public consciousness that like, hey, these are going out of print.
Yeah,
so if
for
you
sure.
want, I mean, every other studio is just like, oh, they don't say a word about it. You just can't buy it anymore. So it's really cool they let everybody know, like, if you want this, get it now.
Yeah, and the other thing with those going out of print, man, they had some good prices on some of that stuff.
Oh,
so
the best prices I've seen on Scream Factory on their website. So
yeah, I think that's why I spent so much, just because they're a lot of those are never that cheap on there. So, yeah.
I also ordered. This wasn't really. I mean, it was on sale, but like Friday for some reason the 4K of The Color Out of Space dropped to like $12 on Amazon. So yeah, and I'll watch that just because of Nicolas Cage. So I'll let you know how that one. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. No. So yeah, Nicolas Cage. I'll have to check it out. Did you see Mandy? I feel like those are kind of going to be similar.
I hope not, because I didn't like Mandy.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's like the same people, but like, God, Mandy just didn't have much of a narrative. And,
it was weird. It was weird for sure. I liked some of the visuals in it. I think more so than the movie, but yeah. And then of course coming up this weekend we got the big Vinegar Syndrome sale.
Right. So I forgot that was actually going on until you just said that. So
are you looking at anything on that one?
I'm probably gonna pick up Rad. Like that's gonna happen. And Dolly Dearest, I know I'm gonna try to get it. And there's a couple more, but there's nothing I can think off the top of my head. I'm gonna have to go back there and look, but I know I want Dolly Dearest and Rad for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up Rad definitely. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm gonna look around and see what they got and see how prices are and how much I really want to spend.
I might finally pick up Tammy and the T-Rex. Like,
yeah, that may be something. I don't know. Is that 4K still in print, or are they out of those?
I don't know. Was it going to be a limited thing? I didn't know.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Haven't really dove into it a whole lot. So, but yeah, lots of money to be spent, folks. So if you're a buyer, right now's the time. Also, talking about spending money, I saw you were doing a little home improvement work last week.
Oh my God! It about killed me. Good Lord, I'll never do that again. Never. Put in a shower, like tile the shower and put in a big shower panel. I mean, it's kind of like going through a car wash for your butt now. Like, so that's kind of cool. You know, you got all the jets that hit you and spray, but I'll never do that again.
Man, home improvement is something like I have these grand visions of things I want to do, but then I look at like just a little paint project I have and I'm like, well, I'm not going to try that at all. I can't even imagine like a shower project like that, because that's almost like once you go to a certain point, you're beyond the point of coming back. You have to walk away.
Once I got like the old shower out and I realized like, oh crap, like it was too late. Like, it's like, you have to do something now. Like, you have no water until this is on. Right. But no, I mean, it came out really nice. But thank you for noticing, by the way.
Yeah, it looked good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to drive to my mom's across state lines for a month.
No, I told my wife, I was like, this is getting done this weekend. Like, I don't care what has to happen. Like, I am showering in that damn thing tonight. Whew. But yes.
Yeah, that's those projects terrify me, so I try to stay away from them. My house would just be dated for years, I guess. So
I'll leave it with this. Like, have you ever seen that movie with Tom Hanks, The Money Pit?
Yes.
That's my house.
Hey, that's.
Yeah. I showed that movie to my wife like shortly after we moved in. She's like, "Oh my God, that's us," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah. Well, man, I wanted to talk about. We had a rough week last week with some famous celebrity deaths. And some big names, really, in my opinion. I mean, we started things off with Little Richard, 87 years old.
Icon.
For younger people, they probably don't realize how instrumental he was in the birth of rock and roll in the U.S. Just a huge name, and I feel like Jerry Lee Lewis is probably the only guy in that group of people that's still kicking. But
yeah,
kind of a big name there to go. And always heard he wasn't. The other two guys I'm going to talk about were pretty well praised in the circles that they worked among, but Little Richard was kind of hard. I think.
He was always like an afterthought when people brought up that era of music. And it's a shame, dude, because I mean, you could see a lot of like Prince and like Michael Jackson, especially like in the way he sung and the way he performed. So he was a big pioneer.
Yeah, I think if Prince and Michael Jackson were still alive, they'd be praising his work.
Absolutely.
Little known fact too, I actually went to I guess it was kind of a stand-up type meet and greet thing with John Waters one time, and John Waters' mustache is because of Little Richard. That was one of his heroes. Yeah,
that's right. I guess that is like the only two people I can think of that have that little like grease stain.
Yes. So it's kind of a interesting little tidbit there. And followed up, Jerry Stiller, 92 years old, father of Ben Stiller. But man, he really had a huge career later in his life with Seinfeld and King of Queens and just various other roles. I think he was even in Zoolander with his son. And
oh man, that dude was funny wherever, like anything I ever saw him in, he just chewed the scenery. Like he was taking over whatever scene that he was in, and he was great, especially in King of Queens. That's where I really got to know who Jerry Stiller was and like what a comedic talent he was.
Yes. Actually, TBS had a kind of Seinfeld marathon this past week with his best episodes too. It was really fun to watch, and I actually tie him to the horror community. He's in stars in one of my favorite episodes of Tales from the Dark Side from back in the day. He plays like a talk show radio host and kind of transforms through the episode. Don't want to give too much.
Oh yeah, dude. I have that whole series. I don't remember that episode, so I'm gonna have to go search that one down.
Advocate. So it's always a fun one. I like watching that one. And then finally, which was weird, this last person was actually talking about Jerry Stiller and Little Richard on Twitter, and just a couple days later he was gone too. And it was Fred Willard, 86 years old, and he reminds me a lot of Jerry Stiller. They kind of played that quirky dad in like Joe's, and I remember one role I remember him later in his life was from it's just a little role in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, and
yeah,
it's kind of hilarious. So 3 big losses there for the community. So
absolutely, they say it comes in threes, man, and it totally did this time.
Yeah. So, but they were all, the youngest one being 86, all had good long lives and accomplished a lot. So that's
left a lot here for us to enjoy. So
for sure. So anything else going on with you? I know you said you wanted to vent a little bit. So what else is going on in your world?
Oh no, man, that's about it, man. I'm excited about the topic we have for today. If you told the people what we're doing yet.
Yes, we have an interview coming up here with Pizowell. I've had a great conversation. We're going to run that for you. We're going to talk about video store memories. Everybody that's of a certain generation has those memories of going to the video store and walking up and down the aisles, checking out their the box art. And really, I think that was a big era on taking a chance on things you didn't know a lot about. So, you can kind of do that on Netflix and things like that, but I think a lot of times you just kind of scroll through Netflix and actually end up not clicking on anything and watching it.
You end up on YouTube watching somebody talk about the movie you thought about maybe watching, but you realize that you were just fine with a 10-minute review of it.
Right. So we'll kick that now. We're going to go to Pizowell, the interview with Pizowell, and talking video store memories, and we'll come back on the back end of that and talk a little bit more about it. And Jonathan actually had video store in the family, so we're going to be diving into that as well. So Be back with you in a minute, folks. So I want to welcome Pizowell to the S'mores Indoors podcast here. He is a lifelong cinephile, collector, critic, and lover of all things macabre. He grew up in the video stores of the late 1980s and 90s, fully immersed in the VHS explosion of that era, and awash in the plethora of horror, exploitation, sleaze, B-movies, and trash that flooded the home video market. He has a fondness for horror movies, but loves all genre of film. He is a collector of DVDs and Blu-rays, as well as movie memorabilia and collectibles, and is an avid convention goer. He has been sharing his love for movies on his YouTube channel since 2009. His content now reaches hundreds of thousands of viewers from all over the world every month. Piz, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. It's awesome to have you here, and I'm excited to talk some video stores with you. That's always a fun topic. So,
always a fun topic, and I love talking about video stores. So, brings back a lot of good memories.
Awesome. So, before we get started, I have a story I wanted to tell you. I don't think I've ever told you this story. So back in 2014, I found myself between jobs for some reason, and kind of hopped on YouTube and was looking around, and I found this video and it sounded interesting, so I clicked on it, and I saw this guy sitting in a room, and he went into this whole dissertation on the Universal Blu-ray for Halloween 2 and the backlash of the title with Universal Pictures putting their name over what was Mustafa Akkad's name.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say I've been hooked to Pizowell ever since, and I want to thank you for all the years of entertainment, and really happy to see all the success you've had over the last 6 years since I've been watching these. So.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just remember watching that video, and then I thought I totally agree with him, but I do still want to buy that Blu-ray because it has tearing novels on it. So
it has, I think that was one of the major selling points for that Blu-ray was Terror in the Aisles.
Yes, definitely. So, but I wanted to thank you, and again, congratulations on all your success. And I feel like you're one of the best people to go to on YouTube when it comes to horror reviews and all that good stuff. So, thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words.
No problem. So talk a little bit about that. You know, you're obviously a huge horror fan. How did that develop, that passion and respect for horror develop over the years for you?
Oh man. I mean, I think it really, two of my earliest memories, one involves a video store, which I'm sure we'll get to that momentarily. The other, one of my earliest memories involves me watching Halloween 2 with my mother. I can vividly see it now. I'm sitting on the couch in our living room watching Halloween 2 next to my mother. I don't even remember how old I was. I had to be we're talking, very young.
Right.
And I remember the sequence in which Ben Tramer gets hit by the police car and he's pinned up against the hippie van and there's the explosion, and I just remember watching that, and my jaw was on the floor. That's the only thing I remember about watching Halloween 2 that night with my mother. I probably didn't watch the whole movie, but that part definitely stuck out. I was just blown away.
Did you watch Halloween 2 first before you saw the first?
Yeah. Halloween 2 would have to be the first one that I saw. That's the first one I remember. And,
I think I was the same way, actually. Just caught it on TV or something like that before I saw the original.
Yeah, and I'm sure this was like the TV version too, because this was before we even had like a VCR in the house. So this had to be like the TV cut, but still, as I remember it, it was just super graphic, watching Ben Tramer die. And of course the close-up on him just burn and just roasting, pinned between the car and the hippie van. I don't know, it just kind of blew me away. An interesting story. What was that? I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's still a pretty crazy scene to watch in a film. So
it is, yeah. It's a little over the top, but I think in a good way, in a fun way. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and just poor Ben Tramer,
right.
poor Ben Tramer. And there's a funny story associated with that night. After the movie, or before I went to bed, which was probably shortly after the movie, I was scared, and I asked Mom if I could sleep with her, and she was like, "Sure, no problem." And so sometime during the night, we had this big, huge yellow cat named Morris. Sometime during the night, he jumped up on my mother's bed and landed like right across her legs. And she thought it was Michael Myers. She thought Michael Myers had come to get her. So according to her, she grabbed me, pulled me to her, and screamed as loud as she could in my ear. And I did not budge.
Wow.
Didn't budge. So,
Crazy.
yeah, that's one of my earliest horror memories.
Cool. Obviously a good movie to start your horror watching out with. So
Yeah.
So before we hit video stores, though, one thing I was going to ask is, do you have like an early, not necessarily horror, but an early, like one of your earliest movie watching memories?
Oh yeah. It would have to be like I remember vividly, when we first got our VCR back in the day. I remember it's a little sketchy, but I remember like my mom and my stepdad coming home with it and like them unboxing it and hooking it up. And the first movie that they rented was Throw Mama from the Train. Have you ever seen Throw Mama from the Train?
Yes, I have.
So that's another significant movie experience in my life. That was the first movie that I saw on VHS, Throw Mama from the Train. I don't remember the movie so much. I just remember like them unboxing the VCR and setting it up, and like it was a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's cool. So obviously now with what we're kind of going through, I'm sure everyone's thankful that we have the streaming services we have. But I think, we're pretty close in age. So we grew up in a time when having movies kind of that you wanted to watch at your home came into prominence with the video stores and VHS and things like that. What do you remember about your earliest experience at the video store?
Well, my other earliest memory is at the video store. I can remember going there with my mother. I don't know if this was the very first time I went there or not, but I remember the video store. I remember the layout of the video store. I remember where the horror section was. I remember where the NES games were. But I remember finding myself standing in front of the horror section and just being in complete wonderment of all of the video boxes. Like I remember the Evil Dead 2, the skeleton, the skull with the eyes staring back at me, and all those other just all that great artwork on those VHS boxes. And just, that I was enamored. And that's another very significant moment. That was, I don't know what it was about it. Maybe I was just I guess I've always been attracted to, ghastly, gory, ghoulish stuff. But right. Yeah, I just remember standing in front of the horror section, and it had to be like 2001 kind of moment, and just sure. Just being completely in awe of what I was seeing.
Yeah. To me, for me, I grew up a pretty modest. Well, I guess I'll just say we were pretty poor. Mm-hmm. My mom was a single parent, and we lived with my grandparents. And obviously, when VCRs first came out, they were very expensive. So I remember actually also our video store. I don't know if yours was like this too, but there early on, you had to actually pay for a membership.
I don't remember if that one was I'm sure it was a pay for a membership. When when I started to get a little bit older and I started hanging out a lot in video stores, I think only like Blockbuster was charging for the memberships.
Okay.
I don't remember any of the other places that actually charging for memberships. I could be wrong. I don't know, but I mean, I'm like you. I grew up, poor. I mean, we always had, a roof over our heads and clothes on our back and food on the table. But I mean, that was about all that we, had. So I mean, um, but renting videos was never like something that, I don't know. It was something that I seem to recall doing a lot as a kid.
Right. Yeah, and I think this was pretty early on. We were in a small town, and we had one at that time one kind of mom and pop place, and they were actually charging. So my first real video store experience was more, we rented a VCR at the library in town, and they had some VHS tapes there too. And I remember like the first VHS I got to pick out, and I picked out the 1931 Dracula. Now, my first experience with that was actually in a book. I don't know if your school did this, but I think like once a year, some people from outside would come out and we would have like a book fair. And they would sell books in that book fair. And I bought this book like twice. It was a book called Movies Greatest Monsters. And it was pretty much just the Universal monsters and just little write-ups about them and pictures. So that was my introduction, that book, to Dracula. So when I was able to rent that movie and watch it for the first time, it's always had a special place in my heart. It's obviously it's a slow movie, slow burn movie, but just that memory from that first rental has always been kind of a special moment for me. So that was kind of my first experience with videotapes and VCRs and things like that. But So obviously you were talking about the horror really drawing you as a kid to the video store. As video stores came and went, was there kind of a big boom in your town or your area with video stores and different ones?
Yeah, there was a big boom in my town with video stores because my town didn't have a movie theater. The closest movie theater was about 20 miles to the east of us, or there was another one about 25 or 30 miles to the west of us. So instead of movie theaters, we always had video stores. And there was a time where, I mean, we at least had, there always seemed to be bare minimum at least 2 different ma and pa video stores in my town operating at the same time.
Right.
So there was always a video store in my town, or in a lot of the time, at least 2 video stores in my town. So yeah, everybody, it was a boom. That's for sure. It was a big boom.
Right. We had, I'm kind of was in a similar town as you as well. Our movie theaters were about 20 to 30 minutes away. And we had a couple video stores, and we also had a grocery store that rented movies.
Mm-hmm.
And that grocery store had like the ultimate like Coliseum home video collection of wrestling tapes. So it was when I would see WrestleMania, it would be like when the tape came out. So that was kind of my go-to for that, and then I would go to the video stores for everything else. But
there was a supermarket right across the street from where I lived, and they started renting videos, and that became, ground zero for me. That was where I discovered the Friday the 13th films. That's where I discovered a lot of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. That's where I really, once I was allowed to watch those kinds of movies, that was the first place I went and just started renting everything they had. And then that really just opened up. If it was a horror movie, I would rent it. And even though I was a little kid and I was renting R-rated horror movies, nobody really raised an eyebrow. But that's where I rented a lot of movies, was from that supermarket actually. And that's where the family rented a lot of movies too. One in particular that I rented there constantly and was the Lost Boys.
Okay.
I can remember being homesick from school one day, and my grandmother actually went across the street to the supermarket and rented me Lost Boys, as if watching Lost Boys would make me feel better. You know what I mean? Like it had medicinal purposes or something.
Right.
So that was one that I remember renting from that video store a lot. But yeah.
I think one thing that I'll kind of talk about was unique at the time is, now you can basically go on Amazon, you can go to Walmart's, or maybe not so much Walmart's anymore, but you can go online and buy pretty much any movie that you want when it comes out. Wasn't the case back in the VHS days. I mean, some of those tapes were over $100 and just could not do that. So, I think the video stores were kind of vital if you wanted to see a certain movie at a certain time. So, so do you have a favorite memory that stands out from your time going to video stores?
Well, I mean, I have so many memories because, I mean, small town, not a lot to do. And, my buddies, I had a friend that worked in a video store, and I had a buddy who was a big cinephile. And me and him and his brother, we would go to this video store and just hang out there basically every day of the week. And my other buddy who worked there, I mean, if we wanted free rentals, cool. It was also there where I discovered screeners. I was given access to the screener closet, and I was just like, oh my God, all of these movies, they're not even out yet. Can I just take these? Sure, whatever. Just take them, whatever. And even like even like little standees and posters. I mean, whatever, you wanted, I mean, I could basically take. But I just, we hung out in there all the time, and we talked movies, and we, shot the bull, and it was kind of a hangout place, really.
Right.
And then a little later on, and I've talked about this video store on my channel in the past. It was the ultimate Ma and Pa video store if you were a horror fan. The guy who ran it was a huge horror fan, and his horror section was just immense. And we're not just talking about, the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Streets, the A-list kind of horror movies. He had everything. He had some of the most obscure, shot on video camera in a guy's backyard horror movies that you could imagine.
Right.
It was prolific, and he loved horror movies, and he liked to talk about horror movies. So we'd go in there a lot also, and talk, shoot the bull with him, and just basically it got to the point where we were renting. He had a deal where you could rent 3 videos and keep them for 3 nights for $3. And we would go in there, and if it even remotely looked like a slasher movie, we would rent it. We'd rent 3. We'd take them back to my buddy's house, and we'd basically watch all 3 of them in a night. But what we would do is, like, if it was a bad movie or if it was slow, we'd fast forward it to like a kill or to some nudity or whatever, you know what I mean? So we ended up watching a lot of, we found a lot of diamonds in the rough, but we also ended up watching a lot of really, really, really bad movies. So like when I'm just talking about like horror movies on my channel, I've had people many times over the years go, man, how are you able to see all of these movies? And I say, it was that video store. It was that Ma and Pa video store. And right. He had everything. He had everything.
That's awesome. I had pretty good video store, but probably not at that level on selection for horror for sure. But I remember one store that I would go to. There's just little things, little nuances that I feel like most video stores were the same everywhere, but there were little nuances that were different at each one. And I just remember like this one I would go to, and all the movies would be lined on the shelf, and on the edge of the shelf there was just a strip of Velcro all the way across. and each movie had a little round tag in front of it, and it was so satisfying when that tag was there and you could peel it off and take it up there, the movie you wanted. Just little things like that. And posters too. You were talking about posters. I remember going to one store in particular, and they would say, "Oh, you can have any of the posters; they're all free." So my grandma would go to bed at night, and she would have a color purple poster on her wall, and I just had posters all through the house, and sure the family loved that. But I think one of my favorite memories was when the movie Halloween 4 came out on VHS, and I would go to this video store every day. I guess it was in the summer after it came out. And I would go every day, and they had one copy. That's all they had was one copy of this movie. Mm-hmm. And I would go every day, and it would be out. Every day it was checked out. Every day it was checked out. And then one day it was there, and I just remember being excited to get that home and watch it. And it was just a fun memory from that time of going to the so.
I remember in like the first video store I was telling you about when I was a little kid. Another thing that really stands out to me about that one was like the standees. They always had like, horror standees in the store. Right. And the one that really stands out for me, I don't know why this one stands out over all the others. It was the Howling. The one that had like the baby. I think it's 4. I think it's Howling 4, but it's got like a carriage on it or something. And I don't know why, but when I think of that video store, I just see that standee. And I guess that's probably because I stood in front of it and was like, wow, that looks really cool. But I remember the standees. And the thing about the Ma and Pa video store that was really awesome with horror, that one also really kind of introduced me to, because he had like NECA figures.
Okay.
And this was like, he had like the big, like 18-inch Leatherface NECA figure in there.
Right.
And he had it right in front. He had it right on the wall above the counter. And every time I would rent a movie or every time I was in there, I would just stare at that thing and just be like, oh God, I want that so badly. And I'm pretty sure the price was like $50, but I mean, for me, dropping $50 on something like that back in the day, I mean, that was just completely unheard of. You know what I mean? I just no way I could do that. But I remember just staring at that thing and thinking, oh God, I would love to have that. And actually, for some reason, a couple of years ago, I was reminiscing about video stores, and I remembered that Leatherface figure, and I was like, by God, I want it. I'm going to buy it right now. And I jumped on eBay and I found one and I bought it, and I was just like unboxing it and looking at it. I was just like, it's been such a long time coming to own this thing. But that was, I remember figures that his video store kind of introduced me to horror figures that I had no idea were even out there.
Right.
One thing I always wanted, and I used to pester him about letting me have it. He had it was a promotional thing for 7. It was a delivery box with some tufts of blonde hair hanging out of it and some blood on the side of the box.
Right.
And I used to beg him, like, dude, you got to let me have, and he had it hanging from the ceiling. And I'd be like, dude, you got to please let me have that. Whenever you take it down, let me know, let me have it, please, please, please. And he wouldn't let me have it. I don't think he even offered to sell it to me. He must have really liked it. I'm sure it's hanging in his house right now, probably. But I wanted that thing so bad, I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the promotional stuff is better than the movie, so you never know.
But you mentioned a movie that was like never in, and that for me was Scream. I didn't have the chance to watch Scream in the theater, and when it came out on video, this was pre the Ma and Pa, the Ultimate Ma and Pa video store. There was just a small Ma and Pa video store in the town, as I recall, at that time. Or at least within walking distance. There were always 2. This one was within walking distance, and there was another one that was not within walking distance. So this is the one that I would go to. And I told the guys, like, put me on the wait list for Scream. I want it so bad, blah blah blah. He only got like one copy. And so finally it came. I don't remember how I knew this, but I was next on the list. And I think he may have even called to let me know that it was in, because I mean, I'd given him, here's my home phone number, here's my social security card, just get me, as soon as it comes in, I want it. And he called me and he said, it's in, if you want it, come and get it. And I walked down there, and as soon as I walked in the front door, he looked at me and his face just sank. And I went, what happened? And he goes, somebody just walked out with it. Who, the employee in the store, didn't know that, it was on hold. Somebody walked in, they rented it, and they just walked out with it. I mean, I was just completely I sank. But like the next day when they brought it back, the guy called again and he said, look, I've got it. I'm holding it. Get your butt here and it's yours. So yeah. I was like obsessed with Scream, and he was nice enough to hold it for me. And I mean, I must have looked really sad that day I walked in and it had been rented, for him to hold it for me like that. But that's another great memory. But I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about video stores, one of the big things about video stores for me growing up was it was a social thing. You could go there and hang out, and even if you didn't rent anything, there was it was a social thing, and that's something that's totally missing with streaming movies these days. Was it a big social thing for you going to the video store back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, it always was. I think movies always were a social thing when I was young. One thing I would do in terms of watching movies, I would go to a friend's house, and his mom they would just record everything that was on Showtime, whatever, and we grew up watching those tapes that she had. I mean, we were watching the Friday the 13th, we were watching Killer Party, we were watching even anything that had any nudity that we could watch while his mom was at work, Hot Dog the movie, and we watched Revenge of the Nerds a lot. But and then as we got older, we would go up in the main street of town and go to the video store together and hang out there, look at stuff. And the video store that we would go to a lot, they even had an arcade in the basement. So it was really kind of a local hangout type place. So yeah, for sure.
Did my small town video stores, they always like there was one in particular. It was so weird. It was a video store, but it was also a tanning salon, and you could also rent tuxedos and like prom dresses from the place. So I mean, they were just and you could also go there and get your taxes done. So I mean, it was a one-stop shop. You want to rent a movie, you want to get your taxes done, you want to get your tan on. You've got the prom coming up. Well, you can get it all done right here.
That is some hustle there.
That is some definite hustle. And now there were I don't know what it was about. That wasn't the only video store in the area that also had adopted the tanning salon thing. I never understood that. Like go to the video store, rent your movie, and tan. I don't understand what that was. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but
maybe that was just in my small town. I don't know. It's just I
think I got it. You got to tan for prom. You got to get your tux for prom, and after prom, you got to have a movie to make out with. So maybe that's how it goes.
There you go.
I do want to stay on that because I think it's important to talk about the social aspect of the video store and movies in general. Because with Netflix, people can be in any room and watch a movie on their phone or whatever. And I think part of my family, at least, it was kind of a family thing to go to the video store and rent movies and have dinner together and watch a movie. And I just think that, that's something we're missing as a society these days too. And, as good as Netflix is, and it's good to have all those options, I just think that's something that we kind of take for granted these days.
One thing I do with Netflix and Amazon Prime and streaming services in general is I spend more time scrolling through what's available than actually watching what's available.
Yes.
And I think there's something very, I don't know, impersonal and kind of disassociative about just, having, I don't know. I heard somebody say they called it something. You have I wish I could remember. You have too many choices or something to that effect. You're you have an overabundance of choices. But back in the day when you went to the video store to rent a movie, you know what I mean? You knew you were going to the video store to rent a movie. That was the whole purpose. Or you were going there to hang out, and you were probably going to rent a video. Right. But to do that, you had to get dressed. You probably took a shower. You wanted to look good, and you went there with a purpose.
Right.
Now we have just so much access to everything at our fingertips at home that it's just so impersonal, and it's, I don't know.
I don't think too many people back in the day, went to the video store, walked up and down all the aisles, and then just walked out the door with nothing. So
no. I mean, I walked up and down all the aisles. When I would take Jeremy to the video store, one of our weekly things is every Saturday we would go to the video store. Right. And Jeremy would look through just about every single title they had. And most of them he would actually pick it up and look at the back of the box. Or it was mostly DVDs at this point. There were still some VHSs thrown in there, but it seems like it was mostly DVD at this point. A lot of the older movies, of course, were on VHS, but he would want to, look at the back of different titles. So we'd be in the video store bare minimum for an hour while he would just look through everything. So yeah, we perused a lot, but we almost always walked out of there with at least one rental. You know what I mean? Like today, right. I can get on Netflix or I can get on Amazon Prime, and I'll spend far more. I'll literally, I'll want to watch something when I sit down and I start up Netflix or whatever, but then I'll scroll through everything for 5 or 10 minutes and be like, I'm not feeling it now. And right. I don't watch anything. That happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day when I brought home a video, I was excited to watch this thing. I couldn't wait to get this thing in the VCR. And some of the movies I would even I'm sure your video stores were probably closed on Sundays, right?
I believe so. Yes.
So if you rented a movie on Saturday, you kept it Saturday, Sunday, and returned it on Monday. Right. So I would rent. One of my favorite things to do, and I did this a lot. I would rent Halloween 4 and 5, and usually some other movie on Saturday, and I'd watch pretty much all 3 of them that night. I'd watch all 3 of them during the course of the day or the evening or the night on Sunday also.
Right.
And I may even watch 1 or 2 of them before I would take them back on Monday, because I was super stoked about watching these movies.
Right.
Now, I mean, I don't know. I'll get excited about wanting to watch a movie, and then I'll sit down and start looking through the movies and go, nah, I'm not feeling it now. And I don't know. I don't know.
I think the biggest problem I have now is I'll have this movie in mind that I want to watch on Netflix or whatever it may be, and then I'll watch a quick video on YouTube, and then I get down some YouTube rabbit hole, and I'm on that for 3 hours, and I never get to the movie. So,
well, and there's so much information about a movie today, on the internet. There's back in the day, if you wanted a review, you would ask the video store owner, sure. What is this movie any good? Or and the guy who ran the Ma and Pa video store, this is one of my favorite memories. Somebody asked him a question about a movie, and this guy was very liberal in his sensibilities about movies, because he liked a lot of really bad movies. Trust me. He hated Blair Witch though. Hated that movie with a passion. I remember I remember hearing him say, "I could shoot a better movie than that in my backyard." But anyway, so that was how you got your reviews back in the day, is you would ask somebody in the video store, "Have you seen this? Is it any good?" And I remember overhearing a conversation he had with somebody. They asked him, "Hey, is this any good?" And even though he liked a lot of really crappy movies, even that one, he had to pause for a moment. And his reply was so, I still laugh about it today. He goes, "It plays good," which is such a, like, what does that even mean? Like, if you put the tape in the VCR, it'll play. Is that what you mean? And it'll play as it's supposed to. That's basically what he's saying. If you rent that and put it in your VCR, it will play. That was his review of the movie. And the guy was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll take it." Like, as if it were a positive review of this movie. I wish I knew what the movie was, because again, this guy was very, he liked a lot of really bad movies. So for him to be like, ugh, but yeah, it plays good, but it got him at the rental. The guy interpreted that as a thumbs up, and he rented the movie, I recall. But I'll think about that even today and just crack up, like, it plays good.
It's funny. A lot of times those clerks or the people working at the store would pretty much shoot straight with you and tell you if it was good or bad. So
yeah. I remember at the video store that my buddy worked at. Actually, there was another buddy that worked there, and he used to get so pissed off because people would come in and go, "Hey, have you got that one movie?" And he would get so pissed off at that he actually created a video box. And he wrote on it that one movie and put it on the shelf. So that when people came in and said, "Hey, have you got that one movie?" Like, "Yeah, it's right over there." But I remember walking into the video store one day and looking on the new release shelf, and there was the box for that one movie. And I knew exactly what he was doing, and I just kind of laughed under my breath.
That's funny. So I want to go back. You were talking about cover art, how it kind of drew your eye when you walk down the aisles. Give me some of your favorite cover art for horror movies back then.
Oh man, Spookies. Spookies is still one of my favorites. That artwork for Spookies is so phenomenal. The Mutilator, that's an awesome one. Evil Dead 2. There's just something about that one. It's very simplistic, but it's definitely eye-catching. The Evil Dead with the arm coming out and pulling the woman into the floor.
Right.
Oh gosh. The Monster Squad was a big one. I remember loving that artwork. That artwork just drew me right into that movie. Right. Vamp. I love the artwork for Vamp. Like, I could just spot Vamp anywhere on the shelf. That was another one that just kind of popped out at me. I loved it. The media VHSs for Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Right. Those are both favorites of mine. That was how I first saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was on that old media VHS that had been rented probably a million times.
Finally weathered.
Finally weathered, exactly, yeah. I actually bought, just the other day, I saw a guy had posted an old media VHS of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 that was in really good condition. It must not have been an ex-rental or anything. And I was like, I've got to buy it.
Yeah.
I've got to buy it. So
those are cool little display pieces for your man caves or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
I think some that stood out to me, and they weren't necessarily my favorite movies, but I always remember that 976 Evil cover.
Mm-hmm.
I always got a kick out of the Breakfast Club Texas Chainsaw 2 cover.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And then another one I always popped in my head, and a movie that me and a friend really watched a lot was Demon Wind.
Oh, and, yeah.
Those were some of my favorites back then. So, but there were so many that it's hard to narrow it down to.
Yeah, that kind of artwork is a lost art, man. I mean, they just don't.
It really sold rentals.
It absolutely did. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I was thinking too. Obviously, Chopping Mall is one that a lot of people talk about. Where there's some cover arts that you rented the movie and they just completely misrepresented the movie for you.
Oh gosh, I'm sure there's a lot. Yeah. I can't really think of any off the top of my head, to be honest. I remember renting Hellbound Hellraiser 2 based on the VHS box, and thinking like, oh, cool, this guy's got like, nails in his head. and taking it home and thinking that it was going to be like a Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street kind of slasher movie. Right. And realizing very early on that it was definitely not. And being pretty freaked out by that movie. But I don't remember any that I rented thinking like, oh, this is cool cover art, and then it was just a sucky movie. But there are tons and tons of movies out there that the VHS artwork sold the movie.
Right. Yeah. So
and can be very misleading.
Right. So I guess along the same lines, I know you're a huge champion now of Friday the 13th 5. What was your initial thoughts about that movie?
I think my initial thoughts were probably like most people's, where it's like, oh, that's the one without Jason in it. It's kind of an oddball movie. It certainly has its high points, you know what I mean? But it was kind of, I don't know, it was almost seen as a non-Friday the 13th movie. Just, yeah, it's the one that doesn't have Jason in it. Or it's the one with the fake Jason is what most people would say, the fake Jason, quote unquote. So people that's how they classified it. And they kind of thought that it was almost, given this status of not being, canon. I never really hated the movie, but yeah, there were times I can recall just thinking like, yeah, that's the one without Jason in it. And just being like kind of, apathetic about it, to be honest. It wasn't until, over the years, I'm trying to think back to I just remember watching it at one point and being like, whoa, like I was watching it for the first time, thinking like, these characters are just like jumping off. These are awesome characters. They're really well written characters, and they're crazy, and they're just, they're so memorable. And I'm cracking up over here. And like the dark humor in the film, really there's no Friday the 13th like it before or after it. It just has its own kind of tone. It has its own, very dark sensibilities. It's got a very dark sense of humor about itself. It's very mean-spirited. But I absolutely 100% think that it has the most colorful characters in this history of the series, has the most memorable characters in the history of the series. Some of the dialogue in it, I think, is just brilliant. I mean, like Danny Steinman had to be writing that thing and just cracking up. Like some of the dialogue between Junior and Ethel, he had to be writing that, just laughing his butt off. So, and of course, I mean, it's super sleazy. I mean, it's like, Friday the 13th Grindhouse edition.
Right.
And all of those things come together for me to just make an extremely entertaining, fun movie. I don't care if it's a Friday the 13th. The fact that it's a Friday the 13th movie and that it's kind of been the black sheep, definitely, it's the underdog. Or it used to be the underdog. I almost think like Jason Goes to Hell is now the underdog, which is another movie that I love. Jason Goes to Hell too. Yeah. But I think it's great that, here over the past few years, there's really been a resurgence in that movie, and people have really kind of given it a second look, and it's definitely got fans. There's no doubt about it. If it didn't have a big fan base, then we wouldn't have gotten, all these Roy figures and all of this Friday the 13th Part 5, merch. But that's because it is so unique. Where it used to be the black sheep of the series, I think it's the one that really kind of stands out the most at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a similar thing with like Halloween 3. That's
Yeah,
really become a beloved movie now. And
yeah.
that's a cover that I loved to see in the store too back in the day, but I was just always told, "Oh, don't watch that one.
Oh
It
yeah,
sucks."
yeah.
So,
That's
uh,
another one too. Yeah, and I think both of those movies were cursed by their names,
yeah, yeah,
but or they were cursed at the time by their names. Now it's kind of a blessing because if Season of the Witch had just been called Season of the Witch, maybe it had done better. It would have done better critically and commercially back in the day, but we wouldn't be talking about it now. And the same thing
no,
with Friday 5. If Friday the 13th Part 5 had just been called the Pinecrest Killer or whatever, you
right.
know, it may be up there with like some of the other standalone slashers of the 80s as far as fanfare is concerned, but it wouldn't be nearly as talked about as it is today. But because
Right.
it's a Friday the 13th, you know, it is. So those titles were blessings and curses for both those movies.
Right. Well, they're both movies that I go to often now. I love both of those, and got Reggie on my wall here. So, yeah,
Well, yeah, and Halloween 3 is another one. Over the years, it's really grown a very devoted audience, and
yes.
now it's you very seldom hear anybody speaking anything negatively about Halloween 3.
No, no, no. I think it's a solid movie for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so at some point, the cover art that we loved as a kid changed, and it was, you talk about like Scream, and I know what you did last summer was basically just people's heads on the cover. And around the same time, the horror genre kind of started to suffer. Do you think it was a cause of kind of like people not renting those things because the cover art wasn't as exciting, or was it the film quality, or was it kind of a combination of all those factors?
It might have been a combination because I can remember after Scream, there were so many like direct to video movies that tried to be Scream, and they had very similar, that photoshopped floating head kind of
Yeah,
artwork. And there were so many of those movies that even though we were very, if it looked like a slasher, we'd rent it. But if it looked like a 90s era Scream knockoff slasher, we wouldn't go near it. Just like, nope,
sure.
not going to rent that. Just forget about it. We know, we know what's going to happen there. There
Right,
were a couple that we rented that we took a chance on, and there were a couple that are okay, but
right.
there were a lot that I don't know, for some reason the Photoshop, the Photoshopped stuff, a poorly made cover art like in Photoshop like that, just really, I don't know. And we've seen tons of those covers where
Right.
they're just this photoshopped mashed together garbage, and they make the movie look horrible. And some of those movies are actually pretty good. I'm not talking about just the 90s, late 90s era Scream knockoffs, but even more recent movies that have had to, for some reason or another, use that kind of crappy cover art.
Yeah.
But yeah, that cover art back in the day certainly turned me and my buddies off to wanting to rent those titles.
Yeah, and then I think it just kind of snowballed. We jumped into like the remake cycle, and it just, a rough time for sure.
Yeah, I think the video stores, everybody says, oh, it was streaming and Netflix and Redbox that really killed the video stores. But as I recall it, even before all that, it just kind of seemed like, and maybe it was just for me, I'm not sure, but it kind of seemed like my interest in video stores kind of started to wane a little bit. And like, and I mean, my small town is a microcosm. We always had at least two ma and pa video stores. We were down to one really, And that Ma and Pa video store, their video section or their video rental section had shrank to almost nothing. And they were selling, literally groceries.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on here? So the video rental business was really kind of drying up even before streaming, to the point where the video stores who were already doing other things, like, their main source of revenue was rentals, but they also did this, that, and the other, had become, our main source of revenue is the tanning salon. And we've got some, you want to rent a video, it's over there. Our video section's over there in the corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of seemed like that was happening even before streaming. Well, long before streaming, but even, when Redbox started to come out, it kind of seemed like there was already things kind of waning.
I think in our area, I'm not sure why this is, but it almost started to dry up when DVD started to hit a lot heavier. Yeah. And I don't know if it was because you could get any title you wanted at the store, or, we weren't in that, premium price for certain movies thing anymore. It was, new release Tuesdays were hitting and things like that. I think I think another thing that probably hurt them too, and you nailed it. It seemed like it was right at the dawning of DVD too, where, for some reason, the video stores weren't getting as many DVDs of titles as they used to with VHS, which is odd because at that point, owning a movie had become far more affordable, and you could. I can remember it was probably around this time that I actually started to build my own collection. So instead of renting movies, I was buying movies. Sure.
So, I mean, that could be a big part of it too. Because back in the day, like I've got VHSs for movies that came out in like the late 80s, like 1988, 1989. And on the back of them, there's a price tag for $200. So even in the late 80s, to buy a movie, it was, on VHS, was $200, and this is like a kind of a low budget, cheapy movie. This wasn't a Warner Brothers title,
right?
So I mean that's $200. But by like the mid '90s, I can remember buying The Crow on VHS for $20.
Yeah.
So the fact that you could own the movie versus renting it, I think that probably hurt video stores too.
And I did that too a lot. I don't know if your stores did this, but a lot of those stores started selling off their VHS and DVD for cheap, and I would buy as much as I could when I could. So
it was really sad because I remember like the final, months of that, the ultimate Ma and Pa video store. They basically, the video rental started to dry up. So they moved. They had an awesome location. They had like a huge location. They moved to a much smaller location, and they started to kind of subsidize the revenue by basically they'd started a convenience store. So they were selling, pop, chips, whatever that you'd find in a normal convenience store, and videos.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they just started like selling off all of their VHS section. They were just going to winnow it down to DVDs because they needed more room for groceries. And that was when I knew, like, okay, so this place is gone.
Yeah.
This place is going away real soon. And I tried to buy a bunch of their VHSs, but because the guy was kind of, I mean, he knew what was going on. He knew that the rad VHS was a rare VHS, and he's not just going to sell it to anybody for $10. I remember asking about it. He was like, "Oh, I've got it on eBay." And I looked at his listing on eBay, and he wanted like, it was $100 at least for that VHS. And I was like, I can't, you know what I mean? So he was selling them in the store, and he'd already thrown a bunch of them up on eBay. And this was like his, I mean, it's difficult to describe just how huge his horror section was.
Yeah.
And to think that it just went to nothing really quickly. And their whole section, everything turned into DVD, and it was basically a corner of the store.
Yeah.
So from that enormous video store that they had with that enormous, beautiful horror section to the corner of the store is now where we rent movies. And it's, just DVDs. It was sad, but it just seemed like, almost like a changing of the guard. Like, okay, this is very telling of, video stores are going away.
Right.
Because this one was definitely going away.
Well, I think it's it was a fun time while it lasted. And it's a time I look back fondly on. And I really do feel like we're missing a lot not having those stores. I know in my area we still have a lot of family videos. I don't know if you have them in your area, but
no, there's a video store in a town nearby, but it's not even really a video store. It's more of like it's a college town. And yeah. I think some of the college kids rent movies from there, but they mostly like buy pizza from there. You know what I mean? So I've been in there, and it doesn't even feel like a video store. So like I remember I went in there a couple of years ago just to kind of look around, and I was like, this doesn't feel like a video store. This isn't,
right.
It just doesn't. It's not the same. So
I agree. I do the same with those family videos, and I don't know. I don't know if it was because it was the VHS era or what it is, but I just, kind of when DVD hit, I lost interest myself. So,
yeah.
And I was getting older, and college was coming, and I had other things on my plate. But
yeah, same here.
So I guess my final question is, looking back, what do you miss the most about that time?
Well, definitely part of it, is the social aspect of it and hanging out with friends, and but also and I think the bigger part of it, I don't know, it just seemed like the video stores of that era just had a certain energy, and when you went in them, that energy just kind of, you felt it, and there was something about hunting down a good movie, finding a good movie on the shelf, and taking it home and watching it. And I don't know. I think the social aspect of it, and again, that energy. Like when I went into that video store, I was telling you about a couple of years ago, there was just no energy there. There was no I don't know, life to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I agree with your points. Living in a small town, you would often see people in there that you knew, and you could talk about movies that you'd each had seen. And, it was definitely a social place to be. And I even missed the little Be Kind Rewind stickers. Funny,
yeah.
The little simple things you kind of miss. But
yeah, I used to love to see, the poor videos that were left in somebody's back seat.
Yes.
and they were like, never leave. You never leave. It was always in front of the sign. This is why you never leave a video in your car in the summer, and it was just melted and distorted. Yeah.
And I always remember to rewind, because they would charge you a fortune if they had to rewind it for you. So.
Yeah. No, I don't remember. I always remember rewinding, because I hated to get, to rent a tape and get it home and be like, oh,
yes.
They didn't rewind it, or it's like halfway through and you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
So I usually always rewound mine, as I recall.
Yeah, I definitely did. I didn't have a dedicated rewinder, but we didn't have dedicated rewinder money in the house, so we had to.
Same here. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it was a fun time, and definitely miss it. It's always good to think back on it and relive that nostalgia. So
yeah, it was a golden era, but it's a bygone era.
For sure. So I want to thank you for coming on, though, and talking about this topic. And why don't you talk a little bit about your your YouTube, your website, and all the good things that you've got going on there.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, my YouTube channel has been around since 2009. I recently just had my 11th year anniversary, which is crazy to think that I've been doing YouTube for 11 years. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And if you're interested in nerdy stuff like horror movies and horror collectibles and stuff of that nature, you should come over and check me out. youtube.com/Pizowell, Pizowell.
All right. Well, guys, make sure you do that. Check Pizowell out. And he has some awesome content. And I definitely thank you for coming on tonight and talking about video stores. And we'll have to hopefully get together again and talk about some other fun topics in the future. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun walking down memory lane. So thanks.
Right. No problem. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to thank Pizowell again once again for being on the show and all the great talk there on video store memories. And Jonathan, I want to throw to you because we talked about our experiences as patrons of the video stores back in the day, but your dad actually owned a video store. Can you talk a little bit about his experience? I know you talked to him some about, actually being on the other side of things and owning a video store in a kind of an interesting time in history, I guess.
Yeah, it was a pizza restaurant first, and then we partnered with a local video chain, and we had our dining room turned into a video store. It wasn't huge, but there was quite a bit of stuff there, and we got new releases and everything. This was probably around 93, 94 when that happened.
So VHS era. So.
Yeah. We actually never went to DVD, and I'll kind of hit on that and what kind of killed the video store. But to understand how this kind of happened, because I think everybody considers, and you probably would too, that the 80s is probably the golden era of the video store.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so you had Blockbuster come in the early 90s, and that killed out all the mom and pops, right? Well, Blockbuster didn't hit Owensboro, Kentucky until the late 90s. It was into the DVD era before that happened. It was still solely mom and pops here, and there's actually one still here called Star Trek's Video, and they still rent VHS, by the way. Shout out to Steve, if you're listening. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's been running that store since the early 90s, and he's hanging in there, man. Basically what happened is, do you remember when you would walk into a grocery store or a gas station and there would randomly be a wall full of VHSs to rent?
Yeah.
That's what was kind of going on here. There was a gas station across the street, and they had partnered with Star Treks to put videos into their store, and I guess there was a payment dispute or something, I don't know, but the guy was pretty angrily pulling all the movies out of the store, and my dad saw him and he's like, pizza and videos, I bet that would probably do pretty well.
Right.
So he went over and talked to him. They cut a deal. They brought everything over. We get new releases a week early, by the way. They would get them earlier than that, honestly. At the main stores, and it's where I saw a ton of stuff for the first time. And I know you and Piz talked about the promotional stuff they'd send out. That was awesome. And getting the screener copies of stuff that said for Warner Brothers use only, do not replicate, all that stuff. So you get to see stuff so much earlier. And every night I would be with my parents. They were they're closing the store up, and I would go, okay, well, I'm gonna go pick out a movie to take home now. And sometimes it would be the same movie over and over and over and over again, but it was fun, man. I mean, you could call in and you could order a pizza for delivery, and if you knew the title of the movie, you could have your movie delivered too. So it was really ahead of the time. Honestly, I don't think anybody else ever did that.
Yeah.
My dad, I was telling you, I'd picked his brain a lot, and he said it was probably a 25 to 30% increase in profitability overnight when they added them. And he was kind of always that way. He had a second one that was an arcade and a pizza restaurant. So I had a unique childhood growing up in my own video store and my own arcade. So, and there's just so many stories about just the movies. Really, it's such a personal journey for me. Around the time that that Blockbuster came in, that's when everything kind of started to die. When DVD came out, we actually never went to DVD. It dropped off so hard that we ended up just shutting it down around 2001. We kept the pizza restaurant, obviously, but like we just pulled the movies out, and unfortunately, all the Star Treks except one are gone now.
I think it's interesting that you bring that up, and I know Blockbuster had success with this, but to me, DVD is kind of where video stores started to take that dive, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
I really understand why that was. But I think for me, one reason is because I was getting older at that time. I was getting ready to head to college. I headed to college late 95. That was a little before the DVD era really kicked in, but I don't know. I think even beyond my age, I felt like DVD was just wasn't the same. I don't know if you have the same outlook on that.
No, I totally agree. I mean, because, all right, so around the time you were heading off to college, I was in kindergarten. So there was, so around 95, around that time. I mean, VHS has always been a little bit more special to me than any other medium. I had trouble with this word earlier. And I think it had to do a lot with the box art, for one thing. Like, they had to they would have to commission pieces of artwork for this. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
And that was the only thing you had to tell you whether you thought the movie was going to be any good or not. So there was just so much more poured into that package. Plus, like, I remember them being stupidly expensive at one point. Am I correct in that assumption? Like, yes. $80, something like that. So, like, they were just like, if you owned a movie, you had to really, really like that movie. So
yeah, I think now with DVD, I think it started back in the DVD era. We started getting the new release Tuesdays, and you could go to certain stores and get the titles you wanted. We didn't have that with VHS. Like we said, there were titles that were $100, $200. You weren't going out and buying those. I remember looking for a stupid title, a stupid movie, but there was a movie with Kevin Kline called Dave, where he's impersonating the president, and for some reason I really liked that movie. But I went to like multiple stores looking for that VHS, and they were all, "Oh, that's $120. We can order it for you." I'm like,
Jesus. Yeah, you remember that? You could mail off for them too. Do you remember that? Like, you get like Columbia House or something.
Yes.
Like you get like 6 of them for a penny, but you have to buy 12 at full price within the next 2 years.
It's hard to do, man, when you got no job and you're a kid. So
yeah.
So I wanted to go back to, you were talking about cover art, and this is something I'll bring back that I talked with Piz about. I felt there was an era around Scream, when Scream came out, where they went from that really cool horror cover art to the Photoshop floating head thing. And I think that, combined with the quality of movies that were coming out, really kind of hurt horror and that VHS era. Do you have any thoughts on kind of how that cover art changed at that time period?
Totally, man. I never really thought about it, but yeah, Scream probably was that turning point. Because like I can remember stuff like Pinocchio's Revenge being something that like was intriguing, but it was like right before Scream, but like it still had like a cover art that I was like, that's interesting. So, but I mean, you could find out. You could try to deduce whatever you wanted to with this cover art. 90% of the time, it had nothing to do with what the movie is actually about. Like Slaughter High, like that was the cool, like that's the one that sticks in my head to this day. I still have the VHS copy from our video store, and it's one of my favorite slashers ever. It's just that skeleton holding a lit apple in a cap and gown, and it terrified me when I was like 5 and 6 years old. So.
Another one that's kind of funny, because Vestron put this one out too, was the Chopping Mall cover. Really was misleading what you were gonna watch.
Turns out like R2-D2's cousin is in the movie, and like you have this like badass like metal hand and like body parts. Like nobody gets chopped in that movie either, which is another thing that pisses me off. They're all shot with like laser beams and shit.
There's a hell of a explosion in that movie though. So yeah.
I actually didn't see that till Joe Bob did his thing a couple weeks ago on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was the first time I'd seen it, and I was very disappointed.
It's a good movie though. It's fun. It's It sucks, but it's fun. So yeah, I'm you were talking about your mom and pop video store kind of hanging around there in your town, but I also know in your town, we still got family videos kicking around. And one thing I want to say about them is I love family video just because you can get some really good deals in there on used stuff.
That's all I do there. So,
but it's really kind of depressing to walk around those aisles there, and it's just like the ghost of a good video store almost.
It is, man, and like I don't get it. Like every time I'm in there, I'm like, how do they make money? Because they have 84 copies of any given new release, and they're gonna have to sell them for $5 a piece next week.
Right.
If they're lucky, they'll get $5 out of them. They probably only rented them once. Like that has to be. It's got to be almost gone. Like I know in my town, it's a small town, but it's not tiny. So the majority of people have access to high-speed internet.
Right.
I have no clue. I would say Family Video's got less than a decade left for its entire run.
Well, a lot of their buildings that they have, they've been, they'll split them up and run like a pizza place in one side or whatever, and those pizza places are closing down.
Yeah, we have a gym in ours.
Oh, really? And you go in there and you can buy a couple used Blu-rays at good prices, but they're also going to push CBD products on you. And
right, that came out of nowhere like last year. Like, you need some CBD oil to go with your copy of American Made on 4K for $3. No, I do not, sir.
Thankfully, I live in a legal marijuana state, so I can do better. Oh,
Jesus, you do, don't you?
That's right.
I forgot.
So
only good thing Illinois got going on right now.
That's about the. You can order your weed products online and go pick them up curbside, just like your groceries. So.
Man. So what was your big hangout for a video store back in the day?
Man, we had this place called Budget Video, and it was cool. It was as I was growing up, there was this big building down on the main street of town, and it was a drugstore as I was growing up. And eventually the drugstore moved to a smaller building in town, and the Budget Video moved into that place. And they actually had a basement, too, that had an arcade in it as well. So it was kind of like the perfect hangout for kids in town, because our town was really small. There wasn't a theater or any really cool places to hang out, but you could go to the arcade, and I would pretty much spend all summer either at Budget Video or at the baseball card shop in town. So those were my two hangouts with the friends.
You're never going to hear kids say anything cool like that now. Like,
nope.
I mean, think.
That's another thing. There's no baseball card shops. And, I mean, we had 3 in town when I was a kid for a small town.
There was always, like, hobbyist stores everywhere. And that's a thing of the past now. Like, the kids have nowhere to, like, go. They just have nowhere to go, really, I guess. Like, you can't even go to the mall anymore.
Yeah, and they're really not. It's sad to say they're not welcome a lot of places. Like even the kids that skateboard now still, which I don't know how many do, but like they're prohibited from doing it anywhere in the city or whatever.
Yeah, man. Like, kids can't go they're like, some of your best memories of your life are forged during that time. And I'm sure you have extremely fond memories of hanging out at that place.
Oh my gosh. I told this story to Piz, but there was one summer, the summer after Halloween 4 came out on VHS. Mm-hmm. Now, unlike Blockbuster and Family Video, like we talked about, they didn't have 80 copies of Halloween 4. They had one copy.
One copy
of VHS.
And if you were lucky, the dude would hook you up if you gave him a call. But that was...
Well, they wouldn't do that. So I went in every day that summer looking for that tape because I wanted to see it. It was on their little wall of new releases. It was always out. And then the one day I went in and it was there. It was like the clouds open and the angels sank down,
Yes!
Oh my God, I'm going to get to see this movie. And, obviously it had better, the nostalgia for me is better than the movie, really. But I still enjoyed the movie. It was a great experience. That was a fun summer. And, In the meantime, while that movie was not in, I was renting all the other horror movies or whatever that I wanted to see. So
do you have like a what the fuck moment, like with anything you rented from a video store where you were just like, do what now? Like after you got home and like everything cleared? I have one, but I want to know if you have one.
Yes. Now here's the other thing. I told Piz this too. I was poor growing up, so we had a very modest income. So my spending money at the video store was limited. But they always had a section of movies that were like informational and that were free. So I would like find anything on there that I could that seemed of interest. Well, there was like this series of VHS tapes that this guy in town had made, and he was like this amateur UFO enthusiast, and he had done all these videos, and I would like watch those, and I had no clue what I was watching.
Oh, that would be so. It was like a local guy made them.
Yes, and then I became friends with his son in high school, so it was.
Do you have any remnants of these?
I do not. I wish I could find them.
That would be hilarious. I'm sure it was crazy.
I tell you what's funny is I work for my career is like writing for a newspaper. So a few years ago, I was the editor of the paper of the town I grew up in, and I had this idea for like October. Every week in October, I wanted to run like a scary, like supposedly true story from town. And I got online. I found this story that he had written about this like UFO or this ghost train or something, or a train saw a UFO or something like that from back in the. So I contacted him. I contacted him and asked him if I could run the story he had written, and he was fine with it. And I should have asked him at that time. I said, "By the way, do you still have those VHS tapes?"
Absolutely, man.
10.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yes.
So here's mine. We had Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 at our store, okay? But for whatever reason, they never gave us 1. So, because we got a lot of the overflow from the other stores too. Like, we weren't the big stores, so, like, we just kind of got whatever they had. And I'd had my dad, like, catch the guy. Again, like, this is all, like, I'm, like, 10 to, like, probably 12 or so when this is all happening. Should not be watching, like, horror movie, like, whatever horror movie I want. But I told my dad, I was like, hey, when he comes in, ask him if they had the first Sleepaway Camp. And, I mean, you know about that. Like, the tonal difference between 2 and 3 and 1 is vast. So the whole time I'm watching 1, I'm confused. And then that ending happens. Dear God, it's like 2 a.m. I'm up way, way, way too late. And that music's going, and I'm shook. Like, I'm like, what the fuck? I feel like they probably should have touched on this in the other 2 movies. Like, more than what they did. Like, that's like one of my favorite video store memories, is going and is finding that one, and then just being like, what the hell? It's nothing like the other 2.
Dude, I love showing that movie to people that have never seen it, because I'm waiting for their reaction at the end.
Well, usually I show it to somebody, they're so bored, and they're like, oh, God. And then that happens, they're like, what the fuck? Like, run it back. What happened?
Dude, I showed this to my girlfriend, was over like a couple of years ago, and we were watching this thing. I'm like, yeah, has kind of a shocking ending. I just kind of want to wait and see what your reaction to it. Dude, it was like 10 minutes in, she called it. She was like, he's a boy. I'm like, how?
There's no way. There's no indicator. Well, did you watch it on Blu-ray?
Yes.
Did you notice, like, the Judy kill, which is supposed to be, like, every other time I saw it, like, on VHS or DVD or whatever, when she's standing in the doorway, you're not supposed to be able to see that that's Ricky, because he was old enough to do stunts and she wasn't and all that. Did you ever notice that? That it's just very, very clearly Ricky standing there and not Angela. He's just Ricky with a wig. That's all it is. Like, if you ever get a chance, run it back. And it kind of confuses the movie. Like, for people who see it on Blu-ray, you're going to be like, why is Ricky standing there? Like, that makes no sense. We're not going to address the fact that he killed Judy. Like, is that what we're not going to do? Like,
yeah, I was shocked. I was kind of pissed, honestly.
Right. Cause I used to do that so much. People would be like, you got to watch this.
Yeah.
90% of the time, it was very effective. They never wanted to see a sequel, though.
No, we're the only insane people. So
yeah, how old were you when you realized that that like, oh, everybody else hates this stuff. Like,
it was a while, I think, because I had a friend that I would go to his house and we would watch, all that stuff while his mom was at work. She had recorded all this stuff off of the pay channels, and we would just spend the whole summer in his living room watching this stuff. And then, any movie we could like see some kind of nudity in, we were watching Revenge of the Nerds 15 times a week. And
yeah, Revenge of the Nerds is a good one for it.
Yeah. But I think, I was lucky to run with a group of guys that we were all kind of into the same thing. So I didn't realize it was like, so not taboo, but, we were the only ones into that crap. So, and they're not into it anymore. So
anybody I've always had like one buddy who was kind of into it with me, like kind of always, but I always like dove way deeper than they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Did you ever check out that Greasy Strangler that
I watched it that night.
Did you?
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Don't.
Okay.
It is so fucking stupid. Like, and it's not even like good stupid. Like, they're obviously and there's so many like weird prosthetic penises in that movie. Like, they should have top billing, honestly, as much as they're showing them. It is so fucking weird. Like, I've never got into that, like, I guess like Tim and Eric or whatever, like, style of comedy. That shit does not hit me correctly, and it pisses me off. And that's all that movie did. I was like, this is fucking stupid. Like, somebody gave somebody money to make this, and like it angered me.
Well, good to know. I'll avoid that one.
It's on Amazon Prime. I'm just glad I didn't pay for watching it.
What a weird time we live in with that being on Amazon Prime. That's
right.
So, I'll kind of wrap up this discussion, I guess. And, I talked about this with Piz, and one of the themes we came up with was the social aspect of the video store. You could talk to the people in the store, talk to the clerks about movies and things like that, which is missing, obviously, with streaming. But I know you're from a kind of newer generation, but what do you miss the most about the video store the way it was?
I miss how it made movie night feel special, right? Like, I mean, back then you didn't have large collection of movies. I mean, you had your favorites, right? But it was a treat, especially for me. Like, it kind of. I mean, I could rent whatever I wanted to, kind of whenever, but it made, like, when the whole family was getting together and you were like, we're gonna pick out this movie and like we're gonna go home, we're gonna watch it together, like. It was an event, and it made something that is extremely isolating now for people, just to sit and binge stuff by themselves and whatever. It made it an event. It was almost like going to the theater. It was theater light,
right?
To me, yeah. So it was an event thing, and I hate that, like, my daughter probably won't get that.
Yeah, I think even the theater is going to be changed here soon, so that's kind of sad.
We've been over that one. Yeah.
I think for me that, we talked about Netflix and how you can kind of scroll through and you end up just clicking out of the app or whatever and not watching anything. I never remember a time going to the video back in the day, walking out with nothing.
No, it never happened.
Yeah, there was something. I would always find something to rent.
And like, do you remember finding out, like, oh, this guy did he did that movie? Like, he's in this. Like, you would just find out, like, all right, your favorite actor, your favorite director did a movie you just never even heard of. Right. And like, it may be 10 years old, but it's brand new to you. And you found that out just by wandering the aisles of the video store.
I think that's how I found, like, it's kind of newer when you talk about things like this, but when I found out, like, Reservoir Dogs, the first thing I'd seen by Tarantino was Pulp Fiction, and I had no clue he'd done Reservoir Dogs, and loved that one too. So
yeah, it was always like, you could, like, the hidden gem factor. You felt like a little more accomplished if you found something that nobody had heard of or you'd never heard of. And there's just so many things that'll never be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one too. Like you said, I felt like, people are watching 3 movies at a time in their house now.
Yeah.
One person on a phone, one person on a tablet, maybe, whatever. Back in the day, it was kind of a, let's go buy pizza to steal from your place, pizza and a movie, and let's have a family night. So
yeah, or like, and this just kind of hit me. Like you said, Pulp Fiction. I was not allowed to watch Pulp Fiction when it came out, but like I remember that being an event movie, right? So like my parents had it because it came in early, right? So like my uncles and aunts came over, and like they'd watch it with us too, or like you'd have to hook somebody up with a copy of it or something. You know what I'm saying? They're like, there was a lot of times it was just more than your immediate family hanging out. Like, or like if you got it for 2 days and you're going to see somebody, hey, bring that movie with us. We'll watch it while we're over there. You know what I mean? They'll like that. And you don't get that now. You just tell somebody like, hey, watch this. It's on Netflix. Like,
yeah, and they probably don't. So
yeah,
I've suggested so many movies to people, the last few years, and no, I haven't got around to that yet. I'm like, what else are you doing with your life?
Yeah, not just that. It's like they'll come to you like, oh, you're the movie guy, right? Like, what's a good movie? And I'm like, oh, you should watch this or this. Oh, those are. I like Fast and the Furious. Like, well, I can't fucking help you there. Like, go watch this, and it'll help your brain. Like.
So yeah, man, it's a time that's passed us by. Unfortunately, it was kind of the golden age of, and the beginning really of movies in your home. Other than what was on TV. So.
Oh, did you ever have a Beta or a Laserdisc player?
I did have a Laserdisc player kind of late in life. I bought it from a friend and had it for a little while, and I totally get the people that like that because it's cool. Like it's kind of like vinyl, at least the cover art and things like that. But I just couldn't get with the flipping discs and switching out discs. And
I swear to God, man, I didn't know until like I was in high school that they put something besides educational videos on Laserdiscs. Like I thought it was like something they made for schools, because like schools like burnt those things up, and I thought it was just that. And I was like, oh, they put out like regular movies on this.
I was lucky enough to have a player that flipped the laser.
Oh, you had a dual laser player.
Yeah, but a lot of those movies I had were still multiple discs, so you had to. Yeah. So
they were shocking to see like for the first time. I'm sure if you showed somebody that now, they'd be like, Jesus.
Yeah. They were pretty crazy. I was worried about like scratching the thing too,
From what I've heard, they're like indestructible though. Like
I'd find a way to destroy it if I could though. But no, I didn't have a Beta player either. We were kind of late on the game financially to get the VHS player itself. So yeah, but
my dad had a Beta player. I just remember those being weird.
Yes. I think they always said the quality of Beta was better, but
it's much better.
Porn dictates what's going to be adopted, and they adopted VHS. So.
Yep.
So, thank you, Ron Jeremy, for VHS. I guess.
Right. Yep. they went with the bigger tape.
Right.
All right.
That's why. Oh man, I think we'll end on Ron Jeremy. Yeah, that's video store memories. I'm sure y'all have some. Love to hear some of your thoughts on that. We'll probably have a little video talking about this topic on the Core Cinema YouTube channel, maybe even Mr. Bombastics, and leave some comments with your favorite video store memories there as well. So I do want to hype what we got coming up for our next episode here in a couple of weeks. We are going to be late on this train, I guess you could say, but we just had the 40th anniversary of Friday the 13th, the initial movie. We are going to do the commentary thing. We're going to have a commentary, and we'll get you all set up, and so you can listen to it along with the movie, and we'll give you some thoughts on our thoughts on the movie, our thoughts on other stuff. I got some things I want to address kind of going along with the cast and some other topics. So should be a fun time. So make sure you look out for that. And Jonathan, I'm going to let you go ahead and tell the people where they can find you again.
You can find me, Mr. Bombastic, on YouTube and Bombastic Reviews on Facebook, as well as be sure to go and like and share the crap out of our Facebook page for S'mores Indoors, so we can get the word out, we can get some more people on here to interview, and we can keep all this great content coming for you.
Yes, it's been a fun 2 episodes so far. Having a good time doing this.
It has.
And I did want to let everyone know we are pretty much everywhere now. We are on iTunes, we are on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and all places in between. I have also changed the Core Cinema Instagram to S'mores Indoors. We have the S'mores Indoors Facebook page, and the Core Cinema YouTube channel will probably be transitioning to S'mores Indoors pretty soon as well, so we can kind of extend content both ways and eventually do some live streams there as well, kind of a la Dead Pit Radio, our good friends there on Dead Pit, and want to thank Pizowell once again. He was gracious with his time. We talked for a good hour there about video store memories, and want to make sure everyone checks him out as well, which if you're listening to this, you probably already know.
Probably know, yeah. I was going to say, and if you wouldn't mind, if you're listening and you have an idea for a topic, drop us a line anywhere, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Let us know. Let us know what you want to hear from us, because we're open to it. And to be honest, I don't know what to talk about half the time, so you're going to have to tell me.
All right. I'm working up some ideas, but once I get through those, we're going to need some more. So
yes.
But we want to thank everyone that's checked out the show so far for sure, and hope you continue. Hope you've been enjoying it. So, guys, until next time, a couple weeks from now probably, take it easy.
Later, guys.